Hi, welcome back to Brooks's Bass Corner. Today I have for you an interview with Felix Pastorius, son of the late great Jaco Pastorius, and now a bassist in his own right. This interview was recorded in Germany in August 2016 at the Warwick Bass Camp. If you're enjoying the reviews, videos and interviews on the channel, please hit the subscribe button below. Hit the notification bell so that you receive notifications when I post up new material, and please give the video a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments regarding the video, leave them below and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. As you'll hear, we discuss a range of topics including the bass of doom, his father obviously, and musically where he's going in his career. I hope you enjoy the interview. And please check out other interviews on the interviews playlist. Okay, we're here at the base camp with Felix Pastorius, and you've been here since Sunday, so how's it been so far? We're at the midway point.
Yeah, well actually I got in Saturday, they run things really quite well here. I mean it's pretty, it's a well-oiled machine, I guess you could say, which is not uncommon when it comes to German engineering, right? Efficiency, right? Exactly. Economically efficient, no. But yeah, it's been fun so far. Luckily, we had Saturday and Sunday to kind of readjust. On Monday, we hit the ground running with students. Actually, Sunday was orientation. That's when all the students came in. And we had both the teachers' orientation and the students. First night's usually a lot of fun because it's just a music hall and we're having a good time.
Yeah.
Guys are seeing each other sometimes. There are some repeat students here, so you know it's fun. It's a nice hang. But Monday we hit the ground running, and it's been quite a learning experience for myself too. Actually,
Is this your first time?
Yes. I did not plan anything for this. I was not aware yet of how many classes I would be teaching. It all kind of came together last minute,
right.
Especially with Billy Sheen not being able to make it. You know, things kind of got shifted around a little bit. So I wasn't sure how many students there were, and I had no idea how many classes I would be teaching. So I kind of just allowed that to happen on its own. And Monday was my,
baptism of
fire.
fire.
Yeah, exactly. First group was my control group, so I could test to see,
Okay. And is it quite a mixed level of ability, do you think?
Yes, it is. It is a mixed level, but to me, and I think, I don't know if there's a better way to. I know the groups were put together based on a questionnaire that was sent out, and that they kind of bunched people in that answered similarly or whatever. And I think more importantly though that it seems like everybody is on the same level in terms of how much time they want to put into practice. And to me that's the same level. Like to me, you're on the same level if that's what you're doing, because it doesn't take much to catch up. All you gotta do is put in the time. If you want to practice, then you're gonna.
I guess once you've spent the money, you're going to come here and actually put the effort in.
Yes.
Otherwise, what's the point in coming?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, to have a good time too.
Well, there is that. There is that. So, having just sat through one of your classes, what do you personally get out of imparting your knowledge and your experience, and what you can bring to the table? How does that? Because it's a two-way street, and I've always thought you can always learn something from someone, no matter what level they're at. There's something that they do or how they react to something that pays back to you. So, I mean,
no, of course, yeah. I mean, obviously that is part of the enriching experience of teaching is having that reaction, or having someone's, let's even call it a mistake when it's not, because how could it be a mistake if it actually leads you into a new direction? So yeah, having those moments is really great. It's interesting for me because I never went to school and I never had a proper teacher. So I have always try to approach my teaching as the way that I taught myself, and I continue to teach myself. And that can be detrimental to my profession as a teacher, because I tend to say a lot and give entirely way too much information right off the bat. But that's because I enjoy it. I really do enjoy sharing information.
Is that because you're excited about what you're
That's
discussing?
right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what I work on, and I try to practice, and I try to think about. Not all the time. I do have responsibilities. I have a fiance. I have a dog. I need to eat and sleep occasionally.
Dog man, what have you got?
Chihuahua.
Okay. Okay.
A long-haired Chihuahua. Yeah, and I'm a tall guy, so in New York it's kind of funny. So I'm tall, tiny little dog, and I love sports too. So I don't think about music all the time, but it is something that I am. It's. I guess you can call it somewhat of a hobby, even though it's what I intend to make money at. I don't. It's not. I don't play music because I can make money from it, and I don't make a whole lot of money from music. I do it because I really do enjoy learning music and practicing.
Is it your profession?
It is. Luckily, I've been able to survive even in New York as a musician. I've done other gigs along the way. I've done many different things living throughout the States to help supplement the need, but I've been very fortunate to play music most of my life.
Join the club.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Inevitable equipment and gear questions. So you're with Aguilar for amplification and pedals?
Yes, pedal and pickups,
And
DCB pickups.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, are you using their preamps as well in your basses?
No, I want to actually. I was thinking about getting one of their preamps recently, and I have a.
Now's your chance to offload all your gear and techie stuff.
You're right.
Go for it.
I wanted to possibly put a preamp into one of my basses. I don't have a very large collection of basses. But it is kind of more of a storyline. It's more of like a history of where I've been and who I am. I don't collect basses. I don't purchase basses for certain reasons. I'm very interested in the idea of having relationships with an instrument, be it a boutique multi-$1,000 instrument or a little scrapper that you find, right? So to me, my instruments, my main instrument, and again, along with Aguilar, I'm very, very fortunate to have been working with them off and on now for, almost 10 years now, maybe.
Wow.
7, 8 years, something like that. I can't remember the first time, but Federa has been a close friend of mine and my family for a long time.
Is this all the New York connection?
Yeah, exactly, which is also really quite wonderful to have those guys right there in my backyard for any needs that I, could possibly come across. But
did they approach you or you went to them?
Federa?
Yeah.
My mom brought me to the shop when I was 15.
So about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you very much. You can't see the graves, I guess, in my beard, but my mother took me and my twin brother to the shop when we were 14 or 15 for the first time, and Vinny and I talk about it quite often. He remembers it like it was yesterday, as do I, and I just remember how sweet everybody was, how excited they were to have us in the shop, and I remember Vinny not letting us leave the shop to go jump on a train. He said, "I'm getting you a cab right now."
Right.
We were just gonna go hop on a train, head back to where we were staying in Canarsie at the time. He was like, "Nope, you're getting a car." Ring, ring, ring. So I've known them for a long time, and I've played some Federas over the years. But I guess my main bass when I do most of my clinician work. And most of my gigs when I play around is with a Federa 6-string Emperor 2, 33-inch scale, rosewood fingerboard, box Elderberl top.
What did you start?
I started on a Fender 4-string, early 90s Fender 4-string, that I still actually have parts of today.
Cool.
Yeah, it's my second go-to bass that I have in my collection. The neck is from that bass,
Wow.
and it's that neck with the first one of the first 4 relic basses of my father's that Fender started mass producing, that were given to the 4 children. That neck on that body with an aftermarket 60s tortoiseshell pickguard. Nice. And the same electronics. But my six string, I put the DCB pickups by Aguilar, the ceramic bar there. I love those pickups. And let's see, I guess my next two go-to basses, what I practice a lot on, is I have a Warwick Alien six string.
Lovely.
Yeah. Or actually, I guess the most important collection right now that's sitting in my house is my father's fretless. But
I was getting this on my list. It's on the next question. Okay, I get we need to address this, so I'm going to go into it feet first. So, your dad's bass is presented to you. What was the emotional reconnection like?
So,
to know, feel free just to talk as much as you want about this because it's important. It's bass history.
Yeah,
you are your own man, but I know.
Okay, it was. Well, first of all, when I got to finally see the bass, it was not under normal circumstances, or what is normal circumstances? I'm sorry. You know, this was a lost relative in some sense. You know, it was something that I have been around my entire life in terms of listening to and stories and everything, but I never met this thing. You know, and so I don't know if there was ever going to be a proper scenario how it would work out. But the way it did happen was, it was during the process of litigation. And my brother and I were in New York. This is before I moved up there. Right before I moved up. And my brother and I were in New York, and we were given the opportunity to see the bass in person.
Where the bass was and who had it, why did they advertise the fact they had it, or was it found? And how did that? Because anyone who'd wanted to keep hold of the thing would have just kept very quiet that they had it.
They would have, unless if they wanted verification from the family and the luthier who refurbished the entire bass. And they wanted us to put the stamp of approval on it, just so they could get maybe a little more bang out of their buck, you know. And we were it was a very tumultuous experience, because here we are with the opportunity to finally see this instrument, and me as a bassist and the rest of my family, we have musicians throughout my family too, to be able to play this thing, touch it, you know, plug it in and experience this instrument for the first time in 30 plus years. But at the same time, it's not ours, and at this point right now, it's in someone else's possession, and there's no proof of how it got into their possession in terms of how it left our father's possession, and that whole process from my father to these guys who had it is a very
twisted
journey. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's no real log of what happened. You know, there's stories that have been told. There are people that were around that tell stories, but there's no definitive, there's no receipt of sale, but there's multiple different things that happen. Yeah. But when we had this opportunity to go see the bass for the first time while we were in litigation, and I show up, and my brother and I show up, and the owner is there. And the owner is, he actually sent the bass away. The guy who brought the bass in the first time, they saw the bass and said, you know, shoo off, you know, this is ridiculous. What do you think? You know, this isn't it. They didn't believe him. So they actually sent him away. Or at least this is what they tell us. And then the guy comes back. And then they get a little more curious about it, because he seems like he's maybe mentioning a few things that make a little more sense and naming some people, and because these are locals who've been in New York for a while, these guys. And so they take a look, and then they get a little excited, and they end up purchasing the bass. The guy who owns the store, his brother is a bassist, and he's the one who apparently started like bodyguarding it. You know, he was the one that it was in his apartment, he wouldn't let it go anywhere. They left it there until they were figuring out what was going on. So we walk into this music store, and the owner's there, and I guess he's making sure that we didn't show up with a lawyer or some kind of, you know, backup or something, you know, or some guns and baseball, right? Exactly. And so we show up. He makes a phone call. Chris GC ends up showing up too. He makes a phone call, and his brother walks in with a gig bag, and it's in the gig bag, and I know it's in there, and you know it's 100 feet away from me, and then it's 50 feet, and then it's 10 feet, and then it's right next to me in a gig bag, and it's a really unusual experience, right? You know, and as being a bassist, you know, and for everything that we had gone through as a family, working towards trying to make sure that our father's estate is protected, you know, that we're all taken care of, which, you know, is not an easy thing when there was a lot of turmoil within the family early on too. So to go through all that stuff and then to finally have maybe the icing on the cake, you know, the bass, you know, back in the position, it was really difficult. And to have the guy pull it out, look around, and then hand me the bass and say, you got 5 minutes. And so for me, that's like, you know, it was like, man, this is so just weird, just a completely weird situation.
Like finding a lost relative.
It is, but you can only have 5 minutes with him, you know, and it was over watchful eyes and very curious and concerned, you know, and I played it for a little bit and I was shaking and it was very, you know, I didn't know what to play on it, you know, and not that I was supposed to have anything planned.
It's
but
emotions.
Yeah, it was just like all of a sudden it's in my hands and I'm like, what, you know, I'm just dumbfounded, you know. And the 5 minutes were up, and then that was it. And then he took the bass, and the brother left while we continued to talk to the owner. So I hadn't seen it again for a few months, half a year or so, while we were still going through litigation. And Robert Trujillo came in and saved the day. We ended up going to the lawyer's office that was representing the music store, and we walked in. They had the bass there. We signed a few things, and I took the bass. We went back to our lawyer's office, and we had a little kind of party, kind of. You know, everybody's celebrating. People were there coming in, and we brought in a little amp. I plugged in. I was playing a bunch of stuff. It was a really great experience.
How did it feel?
It felt amazing.
As in the bass?
It felt amazing. Yeah. I was, you know, I was awestruck by just, you know, the energy that it was surrounding this instrument, the way it sang still, the way notes were just pouring out of it. It just,
the 60s jazz, the proper one, has its own character.
Already, 100%, yeah. And it had, even though it had been refurbished, it had stories. It was you know, an old sailor or something, you know.
It's 50 years old.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it was a great party, man. It felt awesome. And then obviously it went off to Robert, and Robert used it and he went on tour with it, and he played in Yankee Stadium, and we went to go see that. It was amazing, you know.
So has he got it now, or?
No, I have it. Robert has always from day one said that this is your bass as much as it is mine. You know, he believes in it the same way that, you know, I believe in it. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I know that it has to be it. The only reason this bass has any value, I mean, it is valuable because it is a Fender Jazz, but the only reason it has the value that it does have a value is because of one person.
Correct.
And if it wasn't, you know, in the possible realm of being shared within that family still, then it would be kind of sacrilegious, you know. It would be like if his grandchildren weren't given the opportunity to, you
just
know,
like Jameson's bass,
right?
It's
Same thing, yeah.
Same thing.
So
okay,
he you know, all the time just gives me opportunity whenever, you know. I always feel not weird. I always feel concerned with that fact. In fact, my fiance yesterday just took the bass with her because she's going to come visit me here.
Great.
And I don't want the bass sitting in my apartment with nobody there.
No, correct. You don't.
So she went up to her mother's in upstate New York and brought the bass with her on the train, a little gig bag and everything.
Oh,
it's funny the image
he's
of
like
that.
a child. It's a family
Yeah,
member.
no, but it's funny to have that image of this woman who's sitting on a train with a bass that someone might not have any idea what this bass is, what it's done, what it's been a part of, and it's just sitting in a gig bag, next to her.
They know.
Right, little did they know. Right. It's a funny image.
It's like a spy.
Yeah.
Double agent.
Yeah. So the bass is up there right now. But Robert has, but for me, so the reason it's up there is because I always have concerns. Even when I'm home, it's like, man, this maybe could be in a vault. Yeah, this could be in a vault. I mean, Robert, when he has it, I know it stays a lot of times. Metallica has a whole compound where they have all their equipment, and they have. Probably, I picture a giant safe like a cartoon where they have, right, with a big turning, yeah, exactly, with all their gear that they've collected over the years. So that I know it's always safe there. But the first time Robert let me use it was for the Yellow Jackets recording. Yeah. And he was just like, boom, here, just take it, man.
It's there to be used. Instruments aren't just for hanging on walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Your approach to bass playing, what made you start? Was it a family thing? Was it the history of your family, or was it just you gravitated towards playing bass? Some of us do.
Right.
Not interested in guitars, basses.
Yeah. Well, bass specifically is just a byproduct of the encouragement that my mother gave my brother and I to play music.
Okay. So it was a musical stimulus rather than
just a specific instrument. Oh yeah. No. In fact, I don't think she wanted us to play bass specifically. We took violin first, which didn't last very long, and then we played piano, and then my brother switched to guitar.
Okay.
And then we just found ourselves surrounded by instruments that as 11-year-olds, when our mom would leave or we would be, on our own in terms of, a babysitter or something and having a good time or hanging out with an uncle or something and wanting to be raucous little boys, jamming on piano and guitar together was nowhere near as fun as jamming on bass and drums.
Correct.
Nowhere near as fun.
We get all the fun.
Yes.
People don't grasp that.
It was and especially at that age when the lack of maybe theoretical music knowledge, piano and guitar can be a bit difficult. I mean, guitar maybe not so much, you can play some power chords and we would do that too. Guitar was definitely in there. My brother played guitar for a long time also, but we would switch between bass, drums, and guitar. Cool. And drums is the first instrument we ever had in the house. Well, piano was always there. Drums was the first instrument that was ever bought for us as a child. Violin was the first thing we were taught, then piano, and then eventually bass was just one that was more fun to play, Okay.
And did you think from quite early on, once you pick one up and you play, I can actually do something with this. I can be me with this.
I think so. I mean, I just remember having a lot more fun playing bass. Even though I loved figuring music out on piano, I had a lot more fun with bass. In fact, one of my earliest memories when I started fooling around on bass is there's a cassette tape somewhere of my father's father, my grandpa Jack, on drums, and my older brother John on piano, and me on electric bass, and we're just jamming. And I don't think I'd had that much fun ever in my life up until that point,
Cool.
So it was just an instrument that I just gravitated towards, and it was easy to practice also. Okay. In my room at night, I could just take it into bed and just sit there.
The physical nature of a bass guitar, because you're quite a wiry gentleman.
Exactly.
Did that appeal? The fact that it didn't feel like a fairy's guitar.
Right. That too. Well, I was much smaller at the time, but I don't know. Yeah, the sound and to tell you the truth, that moment playing with my family and having that much fun, but also that bug I know I got early on when I started teaching myself music theory on the electric bass. I got that bug. I loved the way the bass looked and sounded and the way things. I'm very visual.
You were saying symmetry.
Yeah, I love it. And my brother and I were encouraged to be artistic all the time, and most of my stuff was fairly angular. Most of my art was fairly angular, where my brother was free flowing and doing a lot of different stuff. Even though we're twins, polar opposites in a lot of ways, similar in a lot of ways, but polar opposite also. a lot of my stuff was angular, and so when I saw the bass, it was immediate for me. And when I started seeing shapes and started learning theory, when I didn't know just the pentatonic and Purple Haze, when I actually started learning music on it, I was like, wow, this is really amazing.
You could connect.
Yeah.
Cool. So when you were younger, coming up, what was your inspiration musically? What sort of things did you like?
We listened to our father a lot, obviously.
Intentionally?
It was on, but there was other things too. Eventually when we were old enough and our mother trusted us to put records on the record player, then it would be intentionally, but our mom didn't play just our father's music for us. She would play us Earth, Wind & Fire and Stevie Wonder. 100%. Those are, for me, R&B and soul and all that was huge coming up for us in our house on the record player. But I'm an early 80s kid, so I was introduced to post-punk and then eventually which turned into like this alternative rock, grunge stuff, and so I was around during Primus was huge for me.
So we're talking early 90s,
yes.
91, 92, 94.
The first two albums I bought with my own money when I was 11 years old was Primus, Sailing the Seas of Cheese, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. That was it. Those are the first two albums I ever bought with my own money.
That's fairly bass heavy.
Yeah, and I listened to those things over and over and over, and that was huge for me. In terms of just musically too, not just bass, it was musically what was going on, but it did help to have those two guys along too. I was extremely, blown away constantly by what they were doing. But then eventually, of course, that was also the early 90s was kind of the progression of the bass personality. All of a sudden, it wasn't just, because prior to that, 70s and 80s, there were maybe a dozen guys that were around that did very specific things and were the fathers of the foundation of modern music and, literally the foundation, obviously, right? Bassists. But then all of a sudden in the 90s, you had a whole slew of the kids who were coming up listening to these amazing musicians that were then creating new sounds and new ideas and new concepts. So all of a sudden you had the whole new, the Michael Manrings and Victor Wootens and
also technology.
Technology too. Well. Totally right.
You had looping pedals. And all these ideas.
Totally. So I started getting introduced to these guys through other musicians. You should check this out. You should check this out. And that was a rabbit hole that I definitely fell into. Getting bass player magazines for the first time and just checking out what was going on out there and. Eventually, I decided I would just keep playing music. My influences now mostly come straight from the musicians I play with. I rarely listen to new instrumental music. Rarely. There's certain cats I still listen to a lot, and I do love a lot of the stuff that's going on now. There's some really hip stuff. But rarely do I pick any of it up and continuously listen to it. It takes me a little bit. Maybe that's my old crankiness, starting to come together. I'm starting to become an old man. But I go to my old things and I stay with my classical music, and rarely do I listen to anything modern. But where was I going to go with this? Oh shit. Sorry.
Come back to it.
I was going to say in terms of, inspiration, right? So rarely am I listening to bass solo albums anymore, or listening to just bassists. It's most of my inspiration as a bassist and what I listen to are the musicians I play with. And I find that's way more a direct connection than anything else that I do in terms of my vocabulary.
Current projects, Yellow Jackets. I know you've kind of taken over that seat, haven't you? Really?
Well, I did. I haven't been there now.
Okay.
Yeah, for a year and a half ago. It's almost 2 years in February, actually.
Right.
We went in separate ways. I was there for 3 years, and that was again that kind of dovetails perfectly into what I was just talking about. my influences are more not necessarily who I'm listening to, it's who I'm playing with. And the Yellow Jackets was a really great experience. It was a whole new vocabulary for me to learn. Not only in that genre specifically, but with such an established band, you know.
Good for the program.
And an established band that literally did have its own vocabulary. It wasn't just the fusion, it was the Yellow Jackets sound, you know. So it was a great experience, and it was a lot of fun. That ended early 2015, and you know, we just decided, I guess, I was looking at other things, and they were looking at maybe moving on and trying some other ideas out. Okay. I did a couple things. I was trying to do some pop stuff for a second. I'm still interested in doing some pop music. I have some original stuff that I do at home with my bands. I have a couple different bands that I try to work with. One primarily now called Hipster Assassins, which is not necessarily really it's not a working band in terms of we don't rehearse. I think we've rehearsed twice ever. And you know, it's more of us just getting together and playing music.
Is this originals or is this covers?
Originals and covers.
Okay.
But I'm going to be working with that a lot more. To tell you the truth, work-wise, right now I've really only been doing. There's this group called Onyx Collective, which is it's a bunch of very talented. I don't want to say kids because they're becoming adults. They're above 18, okay. But because of my age, they are a bunch of kids. So I'm going to call them kids. Very talented kids. One of them is actually, you know, John Benitez, the great bass player. His son is a part of this group.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Josh Benitez, a fabulous keyboard player. It's a group of musicians that are not necessarily one thing. It kind of molds around different projects. I've been recording and playing with them, really hip stuff. I've done some stuff with Fences, this pop musician in New York recently. We recorded last year. I started up again, hopefully we'll continue again with Cindy Blackman Santana. I've done some tours with her, playing her music and some covers, doing her Tony Williams Lifetime-esque type stuff. It's really a lot of fun. It's a great gig, and she's an amazing person to work with, not just play, but really...
Not a drummer either.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, not just an amazing drummer, like really great to work with, super fun to travel. But Jeff Coffin, I've been steady off and on for years now. He was a sax player with Ben Fleck and the Flecktones for 13 years, and now he's with Dave Matthews for, 8 years or so. And so I work with him quite often, you know, when his schedule permitting, obviously. But to tell you the truth, I don't gig that much at the moment. I've been doing some practicing, and I've been writing these books. That's the majority of my time when I am home. All of
these tuition books.
These are theory books for electric bass.
You should send some to the magazine. We can review them.
I just finished book one, and I started all three at the same time, and I finished book one finally after a handful of revisions, and now I'm on book two, which should go much smoother. There's not much more I have to do to it. Book three is going to be a beast. I hope to be done with it by this year. It's going to be. I don't think it's going to be for every musician. I preface every book. There's no words in it. I don't describe anything. It's literally, each book is going to be roughly 100 pages of notation, and that's all it is. And I preface each one with the fact that I'm writing these books for myself to study from. Actually, believe it or not. It's stuff that I want to learn.
Yeah, sure.
That I've thought of, that I've written out, that I know this process, and I've made up this process. Then it was all about putting it down and then going.
Do you find, because of your dad, there's any weight or pressure, and people have expectations?
You mean Donald Duck Dunn? My father Donald?
Correct, That one of the bits.
That bassist?
Yeah.
Which bassist are we talking about? I'm sorry, repeat it one more time. What was that?
That'd be James Jameson.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
you're the light-skinned son.
Because of my father. One more time.
Do you find people have a certain expectation, or do you find there's a pressure when people meet you that because you're his son, and they're just putting you in awe because of the legend that he is and was?
Well, if there is ever pressure on myself to be a musician, a certain type of musician, I don't think anyone can put more on than I can put on for myself. Because it's not necessarily based solely even on just who my father was. Yeah, I mean, there are times obviously where it's not. I consider myself a decent musician and a decent bassist to the point where I would like to compare myself to other musicians. I think that's commonplace, and not in an egotistical way, just as a measuring stick to see, and regardless of who my father is, if I was a bassist, I would still be comparing myself to other bassists, and my father too, for sure. I think it's more difficult for the person who is expecting something than it is for me. My role as a musician is to fulfill my obligations as a bassist in the band that I'm in. The last thing I want to do is disappoint or fuck up a tune for anyone in the band, right?
That's what the glue that holds.
That's right. So for me, I am way more concerned with who I'm playing with in the band. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about live performance. So that's what I love about live music, is being in that moment and having that opportunity to step up to the plate and do what is necessary. But for other people, I think it can be a shame, actually, I think, because I mean, I get it. My father was not around for a very long time. If anybody gets it, I get it, right? My father was not around for a very long time, and a lot of people didn't have that opportunity to see him live. And maybe in some way people like to look as a superimposition of me instead of my father. It's close enough.
Superimposed.
Yeah, So it's like maybe they think, oh, this is my chance to see a Pastorius in a way, and
like a fine wine.
Yeah,
it's a line.
Right, 100%
the
correct.
brand. Yeah.
Exactly right. But this brand isn't as good as it was before. No, all I'm saying is I think they rob themselves of the opportunity to experience new things. Maybe sometimes, I am not going to be my father. I don't pretend to be my father. I don't intend to pretend to be. I know that there are other musicians that like to. I know that there are other bassists that would like to be in the position in terms of maybe not necessarily play like him, although there are a lot that do and try to, and or not try to. They do. I mean, there are amazing bassists nowadays. There are way more than there have ever been, and that will continue to grow. I think more importantly, I think they look at in terms of, they want to be him in terms of maybe carry on what he was doing. I don't know if they grasp necessarily the importance of how being an individual was more the key.
Yes, he was an original.
That was more important than necessarily, to me, my father could have been an astronaut or a baseball player or a cook, and he would have had the same impact because he was a unique individual, and he carried himself a unique way, and he felt ways differently than people normally do. So I think for me, it's if you're going to come out and want to experience maybe something new that you haven't seen before, God, I hope you don't expect to see Jaco, because he's not here anymore. And I do my best to have a good time and try to put on a good show and enjoy playing great music, but it's not every gig. It's almost every day that I play music. It's not even if it's a gig or not. It's always my dad, always. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't hold it against anybody. I get it. He was the one.
Yeah.
The one, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
And yeah, I get it. You love him, I love him. Your favorite album was that? Yeah, that's one of my favorites too, Like, I get it all the time, and I totally understand why. But it gets to the point sometimes, I've had people call me Jaco before, just because they're just so amped up or excited about, not because they think I am,
but the brain's just gone.
Yeah, 100%, and it's an interesting position to be in. I don't take it personally, and I don't know anything other than this life. I can't compare it to anything else. This is what I've lived. So,
but you must be very happy in the one sense that he is so revered, and what he did for such a short time left such a huge
impact. Mark. Yeah, of course. Yeah, no,
it's something to be proud of, regardless of the troubles.
No, are you kidding me? Yeah, no,
it's almost like a timestamp for a decade. That guy.
Yeah, no,
and I didn't get into him until after he passed away.
Right.
But basically, I started a month after he passed away, so I wasn't aware of any of it. It wouldn't have even registered on my ears.
Yeah.
And then you suddenly become a bass player, and everyone's going, "This guy is an absolute legend." It's like, okay, right, play me some of it.
Right.
And for a young 14-year-old who likes pop music and some rock stuff, I was like, head's just kind of fried. I had to put it away and come back to it years later because I just couldn't.
Right.
I wasn't a jazzer. Yes, and Genesis blew my mind. Right. So to then hear your dad go, I have no clue where to start. Then came back to it under my own steam. And sat and appreciated it. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. That's what's so beautiful about music is the way that you eventually go to the music. I
very often do that. And something that I might have completely gone, not interested. I'll come back to, and if I like it, I'll go and buy the entire back.
I'll never forget the first day. The first day when I went from, because I coming up and being surrounded by musicians and hearing musicians talk about this album and this artist and I knew of what was hip and what wasn't hip to listen to even as a young kid, and what's that? Is it Stockholm, the Miles and Coltrane, the like one of the most famous live, right? Yeah. And I remember listening to, I think, Dolphin Dance or something on that. I don't remember which track it was. And when I hear it, I'll know it. But I remember the day when it used to sound like, man, this shit is terrible. They're just playing wrong notes. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This isn't clever at all. And then the first time I heard it, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most brilliant stuff I've ever heard in my life. That was it. But that was because I had to go to it.
Yes.
That didn't change. Nothing changed. My headphones didn't change. The CD, I didn't have a different CD. It was, I went to it. Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Cool. Hi. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you did, please hit the subscribe button below. Hit the notification bell so that you receive notifications when I post up new videos. And please give the video a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions about the interview or the video, leave them below and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. Look forward to seeing you here again on Brooks's Bass Corner.